Hi everyone, hi, it's Christine here, and I am super excited to be here tonight, and I hope that everyone is doing well, and I hope you're now relaxed and refreshed after the holidays that we've just had. And today I am going to be talking to you about how I built my online coaching business by using YouTube. Can you imagine that? I didn't even think of the huge connection here. So, as I said, my name is Christine Crowell, and what I want to do is I want to go through how I used YouTube to make money in my business. And I'm going to go through this step by step. It's a step by step strategy that you can actually use too, but I really want you to be able to learn from this. So let's dive in, shall we? And I hope everyone is doing wonderful and great. I also want to say thank you so much for your support and your subscription, for you subscribing to my YouTube channel, as well as you liking my videos, as well as commenting as well. I've really appreciated it. So thank you so much for your support as well. So I'm just going to go into this right now so that you can learn from this. So here we go. So the first thing that I want to say is that in 2013, all the way back in 2013, I thought to myself, I had my agencies. I was doing healthcare businesses for about 20 years. But originally, I wanted to be a coach. And I went to the bank and, I was talking to the bank manager. And I said, to the bank manager, I said, a lot of people are asking me for advice, And I was like, a bit surprised by it. He said, well, why are you surprised? He said, because you've been doing really good at this. He said, what, you can actually coach people. And I was like, oh, I can be a coach. I didn't even know that there was a thing called business coach, for example. So I then was like, oh, okay, so I can be a business coach. What do they charge? So he said, oh, you can charge about $250 an hour, for example, to start with. I was like, oh, I didn't realize this. But I really wanted to be a coach to begin with. And I said to my husband, I said, look, I want to be a coach. But he said to me, how can you be a coach? This was before I started my healthcare businesses. He said, how can you be a coach if you haven't had your own healthcare businesses? Now, hear me out. I started as a teacher. I was teaching in the colleges across the UK, and I'll give you some of the colleges that I actually was doing tutoring in, for example, across the UK. So I was working as a tutor, as a teacher for colleges in the UK, and I was specializing in healthcare, for example. And I used to, one of the assignments is that I go to one of the hospitals, which was Chichester Hospital in the UK. It's a very large hospital. So that was one of my assignments, was to go and teach before the NVQs came out, for example. Go and teach about healthcare, supervision. Go and teach about health and safety. Go and teach about communication skills. So I was a teacher, and I was sent out as a distance learning tutor to various healthcare organizations, ranging from hospitals, care homes, home care agencies, and supported living, daycare centers. So I was going to all of these places before I actually started doing my own healthcare businesses, for example. So I was going there as a teacher, as an educator, for example. And you imagine me, well, not me, you imagine walking into a hospital and you're in one of the lecture rooms at the hospital where they do teaching. Now, these lecture rooms are huge, and there's hundreds, thousands of people there, sitting there, waiting for you to come and do a talk. It was the most nerve-wracking thing that I could have ever have gone through, but I did it. I overcome that challenge, and I was there teaching health and safety. If you teach health and safety, for me, I found it was a bit boring sometimes, so I had to try and make it more fun, for example, because otherwise people are sitting there, they're literally like this. You know they don't want to be here. They don't want to be there, for example, because they'd rather be somewhere else. Health and safety is not the most wonderfulest subject to teach people, thousands of people in a hospital, for example. It was part of their training, part of the compliance. So anyway, so I was doing my trainings. Then I was doing supervisory management as well. So I would then teach, say, a group of hospital staff, for example, regarding supervisory management, etc., health and safety, blah, blah, blah. They had to come for the lessons. So I was given a room after the lecture. I was given a room where I could come once a week and do the training and also the support and the lectures in a small group, for example. So they would give me, like I said, they would give me a room for me to be able to train the either students or the staff members. So they would then also have to do homework. So they would be given a workbook and then they would do homework. Then I would be there marking off their work, for example, and scoring them. And then what I also used to do is I used to be an exam invigilator. An exam invigilator is where people are taking a test and you're basically sitting there, or sometimes you're walking around quietly, and you're just making sure that people are taking the test and not peeking at other people's work or pulling out their own answers to a test, for example. So that was the kind of style that I was. I was a teacher, I was a tutor, for example. Then I would go to care homes to teach them about communication skills, listening skills, personal care, all these different things I would be teaching, for example, and I loved it. Don't get me wrong, I really, really did enjoy doing that. And also the money was very good as well back then. And I used to drive around, you get paid for expenses, you know, your petrol, for example, and then you could have a sandwich and you would, you know, get paid for that, for example. And then you would be paid per unit, for example. So if you had like 100 students, then you'd be paid good money, for example. So some months I used to get probably about 5,000, for example, a month. And that's because of all the students that I had from different units, that I used to travel around and do this on a regular basis, weekly. And then what happened was that they reduced, you know, obviously they reduced the price slightly, only a little bit. But anyway, as I was going into these healthcare organizations, I was learning, I was learning about healthcare, for example, how they was doing it. And I noticed that there was some things that wasn't quite right, for example. So I would give some advice. If there was a policy that I looked at, for example, and it needed tweaking, then I would help them to change certain policies and procedures, because I was very good at that. And that got me on the journey to becoming a coach, for example. So once I was the tutor for a number of years, for example, and I worked for different organizations. I worked for Brighton Polytechnic College back then, it was called, Chichester University, for example. There was Worthing as well. I was around those locations, for example, doing teaching, and it would either be in a classroom at the college or on site, for example. And I really did enjoy it, and I still, even to this day, I love teaching, because that's what I got my qualifications for, was to be teaching. That's what I thought I would be, a teacher, for the rest of my life. But I got into healthcare organizations because I felt a connection with that. I also did my NEBOSH qualification as well, so that I could go into like factories and things like that. But I didn't go into factories. I felt more resonated with the hospitals and healthcare for some reason. I felt the factories were a bit cold, and it just didn't gel with me. So I said that I prefer going into healthcare organizations, and so I did. So then, like I said, what happened there is that I would be talking with the managers, for example, and just having conversations as well. And then I would notice perhaps something slightly needed tweaking, for example, so that things was relevant, for example, from talking to the staff members, because that is when you really know what's going on, when you speak with staff members and not just the hierarchy, like the managers and that type of thing.